Hello, welcome to Never Is Funny, the show where I, Patrick, talk to funny people and hope to God they talk back. This episode's guest is Pernille Haaland. I've done my best with that. I think when she says at the end of the episode, she says it like Pernille. Jesus Christ. I don't know if I can even keep that in. I feel like I've offended the whole nation of Norway. Anyway, let's move on. She was my favorite category of guest where I can just turn the wind up key at the start and they just go. Unfortunately, this means that I felt like she had so much more to say than just the hour I gave her. But hey, if you want to hear more from Pernille, her show's called Not Related. It's at the Edinburgh Fringe right now. You can go see it right now. Well, not right now. Go see it after you've first listened to this. Sorry, Pernille, but I really need these people. Welcome back to the show, where I talk to comedians in the know. That's right. It's Never As Funny. It's Never As Funny. The show's it's called Never As Funny. It's the name of the show, by the way. Never As Funny. It's the gist of it. The name. The show's called Never. This is like the title music. This is It's called Never As Funny. All right. Welcome to Never As Funny. This week I have on a guest, and they're like a little fact about themselves they've given me. Without knowing you've actually won up to my previous guest who also went for a location thing. They had Australia and the UK, but you got 3, which is you. Wait, so you. Let me see if I can get it in the right order. You were born in Houston, Texas, but your parents are Norwegian, and then you grew up in the UK. Excellent. I mean, in the bit before I started, you said you didn't feel like you super belonged in a specific place. But do you see yourself as more Norwegian, more British, more Texan?
Great question. I sound like this, which obviously lets you know where I've been the most. So I've been in the UK for about 25 years, and that definitely affects my personality. But I just didn't think about it growing up. I just knew I had this weird part of my brain that could speak native troll. And I just
Right.
thought, the Norwegian was just, oh yeah, it was just this language really great in public because no one understood you if you were in the UK and you like needed to tell your mom, I need to use the bathroom, please. And you could just use it as a coded language. And then I didn't think anything of it. Now I just feel like, yeah, my family, we are Norwegian, but I think my life, well, all of like those formative years, your teenage years, your adolescent years, your 20s spent in the UK, and that kind of, I think, shapes your personality a lot. And then I was very, very young when I lived in Texas. I don't remember much from it, but we have some crazy stories. Like, I didn't speak a word of English. I remember me and my sister, we were going to like nursery in Texas, and yeah, we didn't speak English, but we were blonde and blue eyed. They were just like,
Right.
let's go, come in. So it's just, good old how it is with being whatever, like whiteness coming to
Yeah.
be a privilege, I guess, if that makes sense. So there was a lot of that. And then I think my mum found it very hard because she didn't know anyone, and we moved a lot due to my dad's work. He hit the 80s. He worked in like economics and stuff and with oil companies, and that's kind of why we
Oh,
were
wow.
shipped around a lot, and terrible. So yeah, absolute disgusting white privilege coming at you here. But saying that, I have chosen the penniless artist life. So yeah, I think that makes up for it. But no, I think it's definitely informed my personality just because I think if you know more languages, I think that helps in a weird way articulate how you feel. Because it's like certain words have different meanings. So if I would say
Right.
something in Norwegian, that would mean something different than in English. And yeah, they have different impact. It's very emotional language. And I think you articulate yourself in different ways. And I think the more languages you know, the kind of, I don't know if you're better at communicating, but you just have like different, I just feel like
Yeah.
I'm full of different pockets of different life experiences, and they've kind of wielded themselves together to create my personality. But I don't feel very Norwegian. I don't feel, I mean, I guess I feel more British, but I still like, now I'm living in Norway, and that's fine. That hasn't bothered me at all. So it's weird. I don't feel like a place is where I am
Yeah.
from, if that makes sense. And I know a lot of people who are very like emotional when it comes to like their childhood home and where they grew up. And I've never had that. So I don't really know what that's like. So I think last year when I bought my flat was like the first time I actually like, right, I've committed and I'm
Right. Yeah.
gonna build some roots. But that took 35 years. And I think before that I was just going with the wind and just living in a suitcase and just kind of making my way. So I only feel like last year I properly grew up in many ways, and that was, I think, about time.
Yeah. I'm still aiming for that. I mean, I can relate.
Yeah.
My parents are English. My dad's side is kind of Irish, and then I grew up in the US, so I don't really feel. I think there's always a part of me that would like to think of myself as Irish, but that's mainly because it's the coolest one, and I can't really.
Yeah, they are cool.
I've got the American accent, so it doesn't sound great to be doing the whole. Oh yeah, I'm mega Irish. I love St. Patty's Day. It sounds very fraudulent.
Yeah, but I think yours is better. I love when I meet like Americans and they're like, my great 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 grandfather was Greek, and that's why I love feta cheese. And you're like, great, you know. But I feel like, come on, that's not too far out in your family. I think you can say you feel a bit Irish,
Can
you
get
know,
away
because
with
if
it,
you
yeah.
had, yeah, a little bit like, you know, the Irish.
That's good. You said chosen the penniless artist life, which is good on two counts. One lets me segue into asking you about what you do, and B
Yeah.
means that you're very prepped for the inevitable moment in this conversation towards the end.
Yeah.
But you see my eyes glaze over and I run out of interesting questions and I pause and then I look at you and say something like, so when did you first want to be a comedian? Which
Yeah.
everybody's
Yeah.
been asked a billion times. But yeah, so penniless artist life. Pernilla's artist life. That was not good.
No, I understood you, is what I'm trying to say.
That's brilliant. That's all I can hope for. How would you describe where you are at the minute? Like, I assume you call yourself a comedian.
Yeah, great question. It's weird for me because it's always been like, because I started out as an actor and I was very much prepped for freelance life, i.e., having a job and then, you know, waiting until you got a theatre gig or some filming or something. So I was very much used to that on and off life. And what I loved was like, I did acting a long time, and I did like a West End show and did it like very professionally.
Oh, wow.
And then yeah, so legit. But I did train as an actor, and I was very much, that's what I wanted to do. I thought that was like my path. And then I inevitably oh, did I have a stroke? A contract ended. All right. And then I was kind of like, fuck, I don't know if I like the actor life anymore because I have zero control. Because
Right.
I respect, like, I was an actor for about, yeah, like 6 years or something, and then trained as an actor. And it's such a hard life because your life is inevitably in someone else's hands. So
Right.
it's like, if you fit the casting and then the ensemble and then the production, there's so many factors that play into like if you get the job. And I hated the lack of control. And also I felt kind of like I'm going up for these parts and I felt limited in the writing. And I started like getting a sense of, oh, I want to do something more and be more a part of the performance, if that makes sense. And I did
Yeah.
at drama school, I went to Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, which is a mouthful and does sound wanky because all drama schools are pretty naff. But I did clown at drama school. and I
Ah.
fucking loved clown. I didn't know what it was, but I loved that. And then I played this, I think it was like a Shakespearean kind of character, and I got to be really funny. And I was like, "Ooh, there's something here. What is it that I like about being funny and making people laugh?" And then I was unemployed and I didn't know what to do. I just had a breakup.
Yeah.
I was working a terrible job, and that is like a perfect moment to just think, I'll do an open mic, see how it goes. And so I did start slowly venturing into comedy. I did a lot of like, looking back now, I can see that I built up like skills. I did loads of improv, and then I did loads of like character comedy, because that was kind of bridging
Yeah.
acting to writing to being comedically funny. And then I think in 2018, I just did it as myself, and that was terrifying. And I remember like my earliest kind of jokes in terms of like the stuff I used to talk about was my mother. My mother's my biggest inspiration, my Norwegian mother. And it always, you know, switching to talking like her and being very Norwegian. Everybody thought it was very funny because she's very, and it was kind of like it was storytelling using characters to kind of create laughter. And
Yeah.
so I think she was, I mean, she should get 10% of everything I earn because by God, she's helped me out a lot. So I think, and then the more you do that, the more confidence you gain in terms of talking about other stuff. And then naturally, if you start in like comedy in London, you venture to the Edinburgh Fringe. And I
Yeah.
just kept doing the Edinburgh Fringe with, I mean, looking back at my shows, oh God, like mistakes were made. But what the Edinburgh Fringe is amazing at kind of providing is not only like friendships with other comedians, but you get a chance to perform and gain experience and eventually, become better. And you have to be really honest with yourself and be like, is this good enough?
Yes,
Is it
definitely.
bad? And there's no hiding when you're up at the Fringe, and it's probably the most masochistic thing one can do to oneself. But in that, it's the most beautiful thing as well, because you have amazing shows and you connect with audiences. And kind of, in a way, Edinburgh Fringe was that before social media intervened, and now
Right.
anyone can do it wherever they are. They can like create comedy content and then get immediate feedback. And so kind of it was a natural progression from actor world into stand up. But I remember like when I started, I could stand on stage and I could be like, in a way, I was always comfortable because I'd been an actor, so I could hold the mic and I could portray confidence, but I didn't have a voice. I didn't know how to write, and I didn't
Right.
know how to articulate myself. So I think that's kind of what I've honed in on the last couple of years, is just writing and trial and error, and then creating shows. And then gradually you gain that experience and you gain kind of, in a way, your own voice in terms of how you would express yourself. And that is just, I don't know how you can fabricate that, because that is just time and hours
Yeah,
of
definitely.
honing the skills. So then I was gradually like doing comedy in England, and then it's a very clear ladder. You start at the bottom with everyone else, and slowly but surely you progress. If you don't, then people stop doing it. If you do progress, you keep going, keep going. You get paid, you do opens, 20-minute slots.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened and London shut down. And I don't know, I think it's been a bit of a blessing in disguise. I didn't see it at the time. Like, if you ask me about 2021, 2022, I can't remember those years because I was just on fight or flight mode. So
Yeah.
I landed in Oslo. I was like, fuck, what do I do? And I remember having the most serious conversation with my dad, who was just like, look, London is closed. Our country, Norway, shut down. You weren't allowed to travel. We were stuck in the city. And my dad said, like, I think you should choose a different career option because it hasn't happened. And now we're in a global pandemic and
Yeah.
you should think about your options. And I remember being so heartbroken and just having like the biggest existential crisis because I didn't know who I was without like
Yes.
performing
Yeah.
or like that stuff. And I think this was very similar in many ways, and I think it affected a lot of people and a lot of creatives. And so I was either going to do it or I wasn't going to do it. So then I landed, I landed in Oslo, and then I went to my friends in Stavanger, which is the city on the south coast of Norway, and they had an open mic, and I was very, very unaware of like the comedy circuit in Scandinavia. I had no
Right.
idea. And then I was like, oh fuck, I speak this language. I can actually, oh wow, it's now finally becoming useful.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So then I did an open mic, and because I think I'd been going for all those hard years doing set in London and just Edinburgh Fringe, I was very much prepped. So it didn't take long for me to transfer the skills I'd kind of honed and doing it in English to then transfer that to Norwegian. And then from that show in Stavanger, I don't want to like say it just happened like that, but it did. It was very much, I got put on a tour with
Right.
very quite huge comedians in Norway and Scandinavia, and then I toured up and down the country, and from then on the ball kind of just rolled, and then I just kept doing stand up in English and Norwegian and combining the two. And then now looking back, it kind of happened very naturally. I just went with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think I can like remember. And I think can't remember what like happened in those years, but I just kept working and kind of, yeah, just working away. Created a show, went to the Edinburgh Fringe again, and that got reviewed very well. And then came back again, and then did reality TV and became like a TV person in Norway, and then did lots of script work for like shows and TV. So now I think, so it's my job. I'm a stand-up comedian. I do clubs in Scandinavia and Europe and in the UK. And then I create solo shows, which are my own. And then I do corporate events. And then I'm also a script writer for
Right.
TV. So that's kind of like when I was in it, there was no sense to what I was doing. I had no idea where it was going. I just kept kind of just not questioning it, and just like every show mattered.
Right.
Every person I met, like I was very nice. I was very professional. I think also in those years, because it was such a, I lost everything. And then in a weird way, I gained so much back. But I
Right.
think in a weird way of me growing up, kind of landing a bit on my feet, I think London can be an overwhelming place. And I think it was very useful for me to like come back to my family, because I'd been away from them for like, I don't know, 16 years.
Right.
And so it
Wow.
was kind of cool to be like, this is where it started. And then finding myself again. So I do feel like I fell completely apart. And I think the closest thing I've been, I know what depression is, and I understand people because I have friends who are severely depressed, and I didn't experience that level of depression, but it's the closest thing I have come to just being
Right.
completely unraveled. And then just accepting what will be, and then piecing myself together. And now I'm very grateful for that time in a way, because it kind of taught me so much. And then this whole thing of like not taking anything for granted and being really humble, and just kind of it all being about the work. And I think when I look at when I started stand-up comedy, I think I needed it. It was so much about me, and
Yeah.
like it was kind of, I don't want to say masturbatory, but if I look back at like what I was talking about, it was a lot of, it wasn't for the audience, it was much more for me. And what
Right.
I will say, if there's anything I'm very grateful for now after like all of the years of trying and stuff, it's just that thing of like understanding it's for an audience, and it's always
Yes.
for them
Yeah.
and always for the laugh. And so I'm very kind of like, I think that comes from just experience and kind of your own process. But yeah, talk about whatever you want, but always like, you know, the laughs need to come, and it needs to be well written and structured and comedic. And that is kind of what you're serving. And what is funny. And it's interesting also with woke culture, because everyone's so, I don't know, like you always hear a certain type of comedian, I don't know, a white male stand up. I don't want to say that, but very often, like, those are the ones that are very vocal about, like, oh, I can't talk about anything. And it's like, no, I think we can talk about everything. And I think now it's wokeness is also being balanced. So it's the tilt is kind of going the other way. And I think regardless, you can talk about whatever you want, but it's all about being sensitive to who and why are we laughing. And you need to at least take responsibility and accountability for that. So you can talk about anything, and some things are harder to talk about for sure. And then if I sound like this and I'm a white woman, there are some subjects that are going to be tougher for me to talk about, but that's just, you have to accept that that is the society we live in. And instead of, I think, fighting against that and feeling like you're the victim, I think it's much better to be a bit more open and see it as a challenge in terms of like how you can maybe work around that. And then,
definitely.
I think I'm very open, and I'm very open to like feedback and like, oh, I could have changed that. I could do it like that. I'm very interested in the process of it. So for sure, when the end result is great, wonderful. But then I'm like, oh, damn it. Okay, next challenge.
Yes.
Where else can I go? So I really like the creative process of the writing, the performing, the editing, the tearing out your hair at 3 a.m., trying to make it work. I like that. I think you have to like that to be able to do the job.
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
also it goes up and down, and like, the more experienced you get, like, even, if people aren't buying what you're selling, and if you feel like, oh, fuck, I'm bombing now, it's not going well, the experience to be able to go, yeah, I totally agree. That lack of response, that's what that deserved. Next, just being, but that fearlessness comes from years of, like, I think, not feeling that you can do that. You can own it, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So I think stand-up comedy is very linked to who you are as a person and your maturity, and like, and your voice changes. Like, I would never, a few years ago, I would never have spoken about freezing my eggs. I would never have spoken about whatever, like, different topics, because it changes with where you are in life. And
yeah, definitely. I think as well what you said about humbleness, it's good for you as a creative as well, because it creates just the right amount of distance where, as you're saying, if a gig goes terrible, you can be like, okay, well, that piece of work, it wasn't received the way I wanted it to be. How do I fix that? Whereas if it is all about you, and I'm sounding very high and mighty here, but I've obviously done this a lot myself. But when you see it as all on you, then when something doesn't go right, you're like, oh, I fucked up. I am a terrible person. This is me, and I screwed it up. But, if it's a piece of work, then it's not a character flaw that it didn't go well.
Yeah, I think, like, don't mistake me, it hurts like fucking hell when you feel judged and hated, or like boring. That's the worst.
Boring's
Like,
the
what
worst,
was that? Yeah, boring is the worst. So I'm not saying it doesn't hurt when that happens, but I do think if you become suicidal after every gig that doesn't go perfectly or the way you anticipated it was going to go in your head, you can't do the job. You do need to have like a certain level of distance between you and what you're talking about. So if something bad happened or something I want to talk about like something that's close to my heart, whether it be like, trickier topics like sexism or like women get killed by their spouse.
Yeah.
If it's closer to my heart, it requires a more delicate approach. But you do need to be able to like stand there and talk about difficult topics without anyone being worried about you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that requires a bit of distance, and it needs to be very well kind of structured, and you need to know that and feel safe within what you're saying. And I think that as well takes time. And so maybe, like, I remember seeing my friend show up at the Fringe, and her father had passed away, and basically it didn't work because it was too close. She hadn't had enough distance to the event that she was talking about. And that is also, like, for sure, be emotional if you want to be emotional, but also there needs to be, it's also just jokes in a way, it's for you because it comes from you, and there's some semblance in truth in that. But then there also needs to be that thing of like, no, but I'm entertaining an audience.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
And I also feel like the Edinburgh Fringe, when you make like solo shows, it's very different making an Edinburgh Fringe show to doing a club comedy night. And I feel like they're very different. Like, I think you could for sure do a club comedy. You could put together like 3 20-minute sets and make it an hour. For sure, you could do that at the Fringe. But the Fringe is very interested in like storytelling and like
Yes.
or your journey and all that stuff. And that, like, I don't know, I feel like sure you could tell stories doing club comedy, but it's also like it's just such a different format, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
And then again, doing corporate gigs where it has to be squeaky clean. So you're kind of like, it's about like knowing your audience and what is it, who's in.
Right, yeah, 100%. I hate to cut you off in the middle of it, but also Zoom's about to do it for me in a sec.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're approaching the middle section, and then we'll be back to talk more. And I'll actually ask you a bit about your show, because I'm sure you'd actually like to talk about that.
Yeah.
But for the middle section, is there like a song you'd like me to use?
Do you know what? You know what I'd love? You know what would make my day? Can you do Iggy Pop with Passenger?
Yeah, I can. Yes. It took me a second. My brain caught. I heard Iggy, and I wondered. I was thinking about Iggy Azalea, which is a very different.
Yeah, no, fuck no.
Yeah.
Iggy Pop Passenger would be a thing.
Oh, I love that song. Okay, yeah, brilliant. Is that just a song you really like? Is there any context for that?
Nah, I think it's a classic. It's just a classic, I think.
It is.
My dad had great music taste. He would listen to like Pink Floyd, Iggy Pop, all of the rock bands and stuff. So I guess I'll say him. He had great taste in music. I mean, he has good taste in music.
Brilliant. What is it? It's not gone downhill now.
No, it hasn't. He's pretty cool. Yeah, good oldies are always like driving with my dad. It's always like good jams. He's just discovered Spotify at the age of 64. So, he's putting all of his favorites on his little list.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, shout out to your dad. And yeah here comes that. If you're hearing this, you're listening to the episode within probably less than 12 hours of it coming out, that's fire. Good on you. Early bird gets the worm. Unfortunately, in this case, there's no worm here. Sorry. I'm waiting on someone to give me something I can use to make this middle section. That's very enigmatic of me. I know. I'm dark and untrusting like that. But yeah, nothing here. Sorry. Back to the show. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. If you didn't, then what's your problem? And related to that, I was trying to think of a segue with the word relate. I don't know, man. Your show's called Not Related.
No. Yeah, my show's called Not Related and relatable. I don't know.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
No, basically, long story short, it's always like when you're writing a show, it's that bloody curse of overthinking it or just like not just what should it be. So originally the show was called My Hot Girl Summer Turned Lukewarm, and it's essentially about the whole show is just a snapshot picture of where I'm at. I'm 35 and this is what's going on. Basically, that's all the show is about. But I do live in a world where I have a surname. I mean, in the US, you guys don't like soccer. You don't watch it. But basically, yeah, it doesn't really work maybe in the US, but in the UK and in Europe,
yes,
you watch soccer. So basically, there's a famous Norwegian football player called Erling Haaland. And so wherever I go, because I've got the same surname, people always ask if we're related. Right. And so I thought I would make it very clear to everyone.
Oh, I see.
Not related. We're not related. So if you get it, you get it. If you don't, it's funny. It's just a line. It's a joke I say. in the show.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It doesn't mean anything. It's got nothing to do with the show in a nutshell. But basically, since 2023, wherever I go, wherever I'm on tour, when people see my surname, they go, ooh, and then they think that it's the elephant in the room.
Right.
And especially when Manchester City won the Premier League last year, and then, yeah, he's everywhere. It's just, I'm living in the shadow of this guy. And so I kind of, the whole show is, I would say, like a feminist anthem, interwoven silly football jokes just to leave the lads and sluts happy and no one feeling like they're missing something. So that's it. But the show is a little bit like I've turned 35, I've started aging, and I don't really like that. And then everyone around me is taking extreme lengths to try and stay looking young and attractive.
Yeah.
And then how that affects the toxicity of being female and like experiencing that. And then realizing, oh, wow, like you're truly not in your prime anymore, but you are in a way. Like, I think I've never felt more comfortable in my own skin. And it's the conundrum of being a woman is when you kind of age and you know who you are and you kind of are very like, I think much more settled in your own skin. That's when you lose value because you don't look like you're 16 anymore in society's eyes. And then it's just the irony of like when you come into your own, that's when essentially you should be discarded. You should be tossed away.
Yeah.
And so it's a kind of negotiating that balance. It's talking about if you are dating like me and you're trying to date, how can you do that without lowering your standards? Because fuck me, I have so many friends in dysfunctional relationships and they are just settling left, right, and center out of desperation, I think. And then it's kind of like my thoughts on being what it means to be a slut. What does that actually mean? Like, not necessarily, you know, getting paid for. I'm not talking about prostitution, but I'm basically talking a little bit about like every woman in history is deemed basically a slut.
Yes, yeah.
Because it was written by men. So how do you negate slut shaming and hookup culture? And then you have incels who should be absolutely thrilled there are sluts. They are the remedy for that disease. And we just live in this very extreme culture. And then about dating and about dating toxic men who really feel like they've lost their purpose in life. And it's talking, you know, it's the Andrew Tate generation of men aspiring to whatever, get rich quick, buy a Lamborghini, and then get a model girlfriend. And that will make you a man and that will make you happy. And it's like everyone is so lost. And then I talk about being a comedian and like basically saying, I've kind of like come to terms with the fact that sexism will prevail, regardless of like the revolutions we've had in terms of the Me Too movement and whatnot. But basically, you just have to choose your battles. Right. And one of the jokes I have in the show, I don't mind saying it here, but it's just that I had a conversation with someone. So basically, I say, you have to choose your battles when it comes to sexism. Don't try to take it all on because you can't. And then never argue with stupid people. Because I was having a chat with this guy. He said, what do you do for a living? I said, comedy. And then he said, women aren't funny. And then I was like, you're correct. Absolutely. Now, please drive the Uber. Yeah, it's that thing of like, you have to, I don't know if I have thick skin or if I'm dead inside, but I think that where do you put your energy and into who and which battles do you fight? And then I joke about the fact that women aren't funny, and that was an idea. I don't think people know this. It's an idea that was invented by Sigmund Freud when he was like, back in the day, he was the Joe Rogan podcast and men would listen in, and he wrote a book about essentially the biology of the sexes and how humor is too complex for women. We don't understand the nuance of a fart joke, all right? So then I talk about like, just this thing of like men need humor because if you're funny, women, they'll forget about your short height, your lack of hair, the fact that you're ginger,
Yeah.
they'll forget. They will lie with you, they will procreate with you. Whereas women, we don't impress men in the same way because we shouldn't impress with a personality. That's not to their liking. It's all visual. We have so many holes. So don't go on yapping about. Don't distract from like what they're watching. Don't ask a man to want to have sex with you and laugh at you. That is too much. So I talk about like, it's true. It's the ideas that we have inherited from our toxic history. And it's about like dealing with it here and now and understanding like, I think we are a mixture of so many impressions and things from our surrounding, like where you grew up and the people you surround yourself with, and then what thoughts are your own and what thoughts are like just this has been imprinted on me from someone, or and then also like, okay, I'm a stand-up comedian and I have, not only do I have like my decaying body but the fact that I'm aging, then I have the fact that I don't want to settle, and then I'm a comedian that's really unattractive to most men, so I'm kind of fucked, which is such a shame. When I woke up one morning and I realized I think I want to have a baby.
Right.
So I was like very set on being independent and doing my own thing. And then I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, I do need men. They do have a purpose. And then I talk about freezing my eggs. And then, so you can very much see how this show is not related at all to football or the Premier League or Erling Haaland. But I think that's what's funny about it. I have some jokes about him, and that's all it is, really. But excuse me.
Lord bless you.
Sorry. Oh my God! What? Oh no! I wish I could blame it on like pollen allergy, but I think that was just because I've been packing for the Edinburgh Fringe. I've been tossing loads of stuff around, and I think there's
taking in all the dust.
Yeah, totally. So that says a lot about how often I clean. How very tidy I am. So forgive me, forgive your listeners. But so that's what the show is about. It's just some thoughts. I like to do stand-up comedy. So like, that's what I mean. Like some things are like close to the heart, and then there's like this silliness, but then there's, things I really want to talk about in terms of they mean a lot to me. But then it's always negotiating. Okay, cool. I want to talk about this, but can I make it funny?
Yes.
And can it be funny enough? And then, so I started previewing kind of a rough draft, and I just had loads of post-it notes last year, June of 2023.
Oh, right. Wow.
I had lots of notes on post-it little cue cards, and I knew that this was kind of what I was going to talk about. And then I worked with a bit of a director and a bit of a dramaturg just to get like the beats in order. And because when you're doing an hour show, it's nice that there is a bit of journey there. There's a bit of like, it feels like it's moving forwards. And that was important for me. And then I previewed it in Scandinavia and in Europe. I did a bit of a tour in Germany. And what was great about that, what I love about like kind of also when you're based in the UK, you don't ever need to leave that island because it's comedy mecca. But what's amazing is you also become very like English in the way that you, and also like leaning on references like Greg's and TK Maxx and these things that English people, basically these are just, it would be like in the US Walmart.
Yeah.
It's difficult because if you then leave the island of the comedy mecca, okay, you need to understand like, well, how can I make my jokes hit in, if it hits in Germany, if it hits in Berlin, can it hit in Copenhagen?
Yeah.
Can it land in Oslo? Because here's the thing, when you tour around the place, and especially if you're doing English stand-up comedy, it's, the audiences are often expats from all over the world.
Right.
So then you gain very useful intel in terms of, all right, this was clear, this wasn't clear, this they liked, this they didn't like. And it's kind of like, sure, I'm talking about Western Europe now, and there's the same kind of, I guess, we're all kind of, but
Yeah.
it's fascinating to me how you can say something lasts 20 seconds and you can make a whole room of like 100 people or whatever from all parts of the world, and they will
Yes.
laugh at that moment. And that's when you know, A, the joke is bulletproof, which is what you're kind of hoping to gain from doing previews and honing the material. But also, it's just gives you insight because then you're like, and of course, sure, like, have I added more Harry Potter references because it's in Edinburgh? Sure. But you're aware you can do that there, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, so then I started touring and then I did a few shows, but I honestly feel this was a slow burner and
Right.
I'm still working on bits that I feel are a little bit, ooh, like how do I, ooh, like
Yes.
I still have question marks around certain bits. And I think a couple of years ago, I would have been terrified. But now I feel very much like, oh, I'm excited to work that out because I know
Yes.
how it feels. I'm excited to play it to an audience because I know it will land where it's okay that that part of it is a bit open. I'm not worried. I trust that it will find its way
Yeah.
and I trust that it'll come together. Yeah, but I was gonna say this was a slow burner. It took ages and loads of rewriting. Also, the things I found very tricky talking about was maybe things that are too close to me, i.e.,
Yeah.
female relationships between women, your mother, your sister. Oh, it's so hard because it's like I can't really see the trees from the
Right.
what's that
Yeah.
saying? That took ages. So it wasn't until I went to Reykjavik in Iceland and I did the
Oh, wow.
Fringe, and that was the moment the show really came. Like I found my last joke, and I was like, oh, that's okay. We've landed. All right,
Yeah.
here it is. But that I'm talking June, and I'm talking that took it 12 months,
Yeah.
24 previews sporadically, kind of also doing other gigs and doing also that's tricky for me. And that's something I don't know a lot of people, only people who are bilingual can relate to that. But also, I do stand up in Norwegian. It is different. The
Yeah.
rhythm is different. So you're kind of like having to work twice as hard. So you do the jobs and the work here, and then you do the show. And then also, it's kind of like if you do a club night, that's kind of a bit different. So it's all of these, you're just spinning plates, which you do as a freelancer, anyways. But I do think, like, if you are, I know so many, when I've started traveling and touring, I meet so many people, Germans doing English stand up and German stand up, and that's different. And then
Yeah.
French people doing it in English and French. And then loads of people are doing it. So I felt very inspired. It helps traveling as well. I think outside of the UK, I gained a lot of insight in terms of like what's going on in different parts of the world and also like people, just the different crowds.
Right.
And yeah, so I think it's been very valuable for that purpose, I guess. But it was interesting. And then I did Brighton Fringe and I realized like, Brighton is a very woke place and
Right.
very politically correct. And some of my jokes, they were a bit like, they kind of like froze up. They didn't know if they were allowed to laugh. And
Oh,
then you're
really?
like, no, no, you're allowed to laugh. So it's balancing like, because also like Edinburgh and London as well, or Edinburgh especially, a very liberal arts festival
Yes. Yeah.
where, that plays into the equation. I think regardless, when you are a stand-up, you just can't second guess yourself. So
Right.
you've written this, you've thought about this, you've tested it, and then some audiences will like it, some won't. That's okay. That's 100% okay.
Yeah.
But like you just have to play that room and make it work. Because at the end of the day, if it fails, it's just your fault. So you should jump off a cliff and die. But also, then you do have another show the next day. So you just have to get back on the horse or whatever and do it. So it's interesting. I think that's what's cool about the job. You're never done figuring it out. And then the
Oh, yeah.
worst is if you like in 6 months' time, I will have that moment where I'm like, oh fuck, I should have said it like that. That was what I should have, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that gift of hindsight, oh, it's annoying, but it's also so necessary.
Yeah, definitely. I'm interested. There's a couple of different things I'm interested in, which is good because I'm interviewing you. But one of them, I mean, you were just talking about how you play to all these different kinds of audiences and different jokes landing in different places. How do you manage the balance when you're working on your preview show like that between this is okay, this audience didn't react particularly well to it, but I know this is strong and this is how I want my show to go. And, oh, that didn't work, that needs to change. I mean, is it just you do enough and the averages of it, or is there more to it?
Yeah, great question. I think first, it depends. All right, sometimes I'm not gonna lie, I get angry and I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck you. But this was very well thought out. You're wrong, I'm right. Then I listen back and I go, no, they're right. The premise wasn't clear enough, or the punchline wasn't good enough. There's always things you can strengthen. And if you're able to just quiet your ego down,
Yeah.
and go, okay, inner child, have a tantrum, feel the feelings, cool. Now let's get to work. All right. So then you and also like with a show, it's like you want different laughs as well. So when I'm talking about maybe the more serious stuff, it's like maybe that's a different laugh to the really silly stuff. So it's like different laughs. So you know that going in. So it's just, I think it's about taking the temperature of who's in, and then just telling the story, telling it like it's just the first time, and being with them, not being ahead, not analyzing what just happened, kind of just being there in that moment, and then letting that be and respecting them, the audience, like that was their feedback for that. Cool.
Right.
All right. But then also like you do it enough times where you have to be like, well, that is the bit. So take it or leave it. I'm defending that bit, because if not, if you're just constantly like, ugh, then it's like, well, then you're not standing for it, are you? Because then you just feel, it just feels like you're, what's that word when you're kind of like pandering, I guess?
Oh, yeah, pandering. I was going to say almost like people pleaser.
Yeah, people pleaser. Yeah, for sure. It just, I think, I don't know. I think you can tell when something's been really worked, and then it takes time for it to really simmer, cook.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, you just know, right, it feels like it's flowing. That's the best way of describing it. When it doesn't flow, it's because there are issues and there are like bits that are in the way. So then how can you just make it kind of flow better?
Right.
That's the best way I have of describing it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when it comes to making it flow, I mean, you mentioned that there's bits which you're a bit more open on and that might evolve over the course of the Fringe and things. What is the structure like of your show? Like, do you have a script that you stick to, or do you have room for bits of crowd work? How much of it is improvised? Like, that type of, what are the bones of it?
That's a great question. I think that just comes down to like experience and stuff. Like I do a lot of MC, and if I look back at all of the clowning and like the improv stuff, all of that feeds into like the muscle of MCing and doing crowd work. And if it's an audience and they are up for that, for sure, use it. But sometimes, depending if you're doing, a solo show, sometimes they want to be spoken to, not spoken with.
Yes.
I just think you have to kind of, I always like to start my shows by finding out if they are from that place or if they are outsiders. Because I very much relate to being an outsider because of my background, i.e. moving a lot and never feeling, even when we lived in the UK, like I moved a lot in the UK. So I feel that is my strength, that I'm not one who, this is my identity. No, my identity is very scattered in many ways. But I do always do a bit of a tally in the beginning And then I say, yeah, I can tell, none of you guys are Norwegian.
Right.
Not that you're not white, for sure. This looks like a Coldplay concert or whatever. But then I always have to kind of explain what I am, that this is kind of, I have this voice, but I have that name.
Yeah.
And those two, it's just setting up, it's like basic improv rules, the who, what, where. You need to give an audience the who, what, where, so they feel sure that that they know, that we all know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it very much often feels good to, like, in the beginning of starting your show, you can do it in so many ways, but I also like just hearing where the outsiders are. If they're from London, great. If they're not from London, okay, cool, where are they from? Great. And then taking a tally of the disgruntled, unimpressed Scandinavians, where are they? And Norwegians especially. And that's a good game. I always like to start with that because it feels very authentic to me.
Yes.
I think that's all you want as an audience. You just want someone to come on stage and feel like they are at home and that they're comfortable and that you're in safe hands with this person. This person is in control of everything that's going on, and you just have to open up. And I think you open up as an audience if the person you're watching or the comedian you're watching is also completely open and fearless. And also I like the fact that comedy, anything can happen. And that's, instead of being scared of that, I think lean into that. And for me, that makes it more authentic, that I feel the audience feels like this is a show for them. It is happening right here, right now. And why is comedy worth seeing live? It's because of that.
Right.
I think the best strength of improv is that it's the surprise. It's happening right here and now, and it can never be replicated ever again.
Yeah.
Because why watch live shows if it's completely perfect as well? Like, then you could just be watching Netflix.
Yes. Yeah.
So I like the element of surprise. I like the fact that it can go. I'm not afraid that I have a conversation with an audience and it doesn't go anywhere. Like, I know I have enough experience to be like, well, that was interesting for me, or whatever, or just, make a joke and make light of it. And I think just not rushing as well, just taking your time and being there in the moment. One of my biggest mistakes, I think, starting stand-up, and I was so worried that it had to go a certain way and I had to force my way of, it's supposed to be like this and this is how it's going to go, and you have no control. Like, you do, of course you have control, you know what you're saying and you know how, but allowing the element of surprise and allowing it to be alive and not to, like, weigh it down with maybe like strictness. Like, allow it to play. It's fun. Be silly, be childish, allow it to breathe. Because I think, and probably because of fear, inexperience, and feeling like, oh, I have to achieve this, that in the beginning was it took a lot for me to let go. I think that has gotten better the more experience I've gained.
Right.
It's just that thing of, like, whenever I see stand-up comedians and whenever I see a performer, I always think, are they breathing?
Right.
Are they really breathing? Or are they thinking about what is coming and hitting what they need? Like, are they so up here that they're not with their body or connected? And I always think the best comedians are the ones, like, who do I see? I recently saw someone, I mean, there's so many brilliant people, but I remember seeing Mike Birbiglia live, and he's fantastic. He's a great storyteller, but he was just there. There wasn't anything else in terms of, like, he just felt very present. And I think that is also why you go and see live shows, because you feel someone is present there with you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a really good collection of thoughts. I mean, I hate to do this, but as always, the podcast format necessitates, although you clearly have tons to say on the subject. But before we go to like plugs and things like that.
That is Patrick telling me to shut the fuck up, and I appreciate it. I can go on for days, and I'm so sorry. I probably, because I've been packing all day, I feel like, also like, I will cringe so much listening to this back. Like, I will go, fucking hell, what a numpty. What is she talking about? Blah, blah, blah. And then that'll be fine. So yeah, I agree. Ask questions, Patrick. Get in there.
You can't put words about it. You can't be like, Patrick's telling me to shut up, and I agree. I'm just taking a page out of Sigmund's book. Women can't tell jokes and need to fuck their dads, and it's clearly flawless logic.
There you go.
But with that, I would love to play a sample of your work. So
no. Do I have to listen to it?
Not if you don't want to, no, because this will be something I insert after.
Okay, cool. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can send you some stuff.
Okay, brilliant. So yeah, here comes some stuff. And I don't know what it is yet, but I'm sure it'll be very funny because you are funny. I think I've lived in the UK long enough that saying flat out compliments like you are funny is really difficult for me to do without sounding like I'm being semi-ironic
No, I'm
in some
hating
way.
every moment of this. You're absolutely right. We both hate this. We should just stop immediately. That is one thing I fucking love about the British. It's this, anything that's a compliment or over enthusiasm over something, like, you know, you never say amazing. No, it's not amazing. It's absolutely average, and that is fine.
It's refreshing because I've spoken to a lot of American comedians recently.
Oh, the worst.
And they don't have any concept of, like, in the UK, when you've done some kind of creative project, you describe it like, it's just a thing I did. Probably a little bit shit, but, you move. And you say that to an American, they look at you like, what's wrong with you? Why would you describe your own work that way? You're amazing. You're brilliant.
Yeah.
You're really good. And it's a little tough to handle.
Yeah.
But, your clip. That's playing. Here it comes.
I've always been a confused individual. My mother was very worried for me. She said to me quite recently, she was like, Pernille, when you was a child, we was worried. So we tested you for the autism 5 times. But the doctors agreed. It's just your personality. So you just need to learn how to keep that to yourself. I was always very insecure growing up. I was flat-chested, so I used to wear a bra 2 sizes too big. Build them a home, they will come. Never worked. When I took it off on the floor, tissues, teddies, disappointment. Okay, and then when I started dating the boys, I was very innocent, very naive, which I think you are as a girl. It's quite an ordeal. You literally go from skipping down the road, holding hands, to, it's a dick. Happens so quickly. And then you're left with terrible role models. I watched too much Disney growing up, and I just wish there was one Disney princess who told the truth. Do you know what I mean? Who was like, psst, Cinderella, sorry to interrupt, but if that boyfriend of yours is carrying around your shoe and then he's trying it on with different women because he cannot remember your face, that is a fuckboy with a foot fetish. Would have been useful, so you don't stand around waiting to be picked by a guy, and then when you catch a man, you need to get him to say, I love you, because I can't. So if he can, I'll latch onto that. Try and feel some of this self-worth, like a Harry Potter Dementor. It's a lot. So I'm trying to grow up. I'm trying to become the woman I'm supposed to be. I make mistakes. I once dated my friend's ex-boyfriend. In my defense, I was recycling. I'm not a great woman. Even my body agrees. I went to the gynecologist, and of all places, I received a compliment. She said to me, oh, Pernille, you have a lovely pear-shaped uterus. I was like, is that good? Yes, it looks about right. Oh, stop it. More compliments, please. Then she did this ultrasound, and that's when she discovered I've got cysts decorating my ovaries. And she said to me, oh, but I see here you have PCOS. And I was like, no, I use a MacBook Pro. Wasn't what she meant. She was like, it's polycystic ovary syndrome. So I have a hormonal imbalance. I have too much testosterone, big dick energy. All right. But on the flip side, if people say grow some balls, I am truly my father's daughter. Yeah, she gets it from me. Now, my big dick energy does get in the way of my love life. I recently had a breakup, but it was very mutual. He dumped me, I agreed. Well, he actually said, babe, I think I'm gonna have to let you go. So was I dumped or fired? A lot of people lost their jobs during this pandemic. Now, my mother, she always tries to help me out. She gives me advice I didn't ask for. But she's always like, oh, Pernille, you just need to find somebody, anybody, with one okay quality you like, and then you zoom in on it. Look at your father. Boring, but tall. And I was dating an English guy quite recently, and it was going well until he kind of found out I'm Norwegian, and he got a bit excited. He was like, oh, babe, in the bedroom, can we try some role play? Can you go all sexy Norwegian Viking? Herda. And he hadn't thought this through, because the next day when I came at him, it didn't turn him on, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, he just shouted out his safety word. Brexit! And that was disappointing. But you guys have been lovely. I have been penile. Thank you so, so much.
And it's played. So, obviously we've talked about your show a lot, so it's in Edinburgh. But would you like to give specific plugs about how people can find that or find you on social media, anything else in general?
Yeah, just if you, I've felt like such a wanker during this podcast, but I promise you, I'm never this sincere in real life. I think Patrick has very empathetic eyes, and I just talk to him and I've opened up, and I will regret it forevermore. But if you, I don't know, you can follow me on social media. All of my social media is my name, Pernille Haaland, and you'll find me. And then the show is in Edinburgh every day at 20 to 6, which is a weird time, I know. So 17:40 p.m. And it's on at Paterhouse, which is Gilded Balloons venue. Basically, If you just search, basically no one at the whole Edinburgh Fringe has my first name. So if you go anywhere and you just type Pernille, I'll come up. So sure. And for better or worse, I say bring your friends, bring your enemies, bring your therapist. And I hope to see you in the crowd.
Absolutely. And probably don't do that with the last name, though, unless you have to dig through a lot of football stuff first.
Yeah, unfortunately, that will be the curse if you just type in my surname. And I apologize for that.
That's it. Well, I'll let it pass this time. But if you're ever on again, I would advise getting a different surname just for marketing reasons.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a great chat. And I'm looking forward to putting this out. Looking forward to hopefully seeing the show. And I've been Patrick. My guest has been Pernille. I'll see you guys next week. And I have been saying, and generally what I've been doing is making the same joke every time of, but my guest, they won't see you next week. But there's a good chance you will, because obviously performing at the Fringe, starting this week. So
tell me about it. Yeah.
But go see the show. And goodbye, everyone. Thank you for making it all the way to the end of the show. You can find the show on Instagram at neverasfunny, because of course what else would it be? All one word, all lowercase. The music used in the intro and the outro that you listen to right now is There It Is by Kevin MacLeod and Contact.com, licensed under Creative Commons, band producing 4.0, licensed creativecommons.org/licenses/by/4.0. Guess next week it's two of them at once, Andy Bucks and Alice Wickersham from the sketch group Low Effort Sketches. Be there or be square. Thanks for listening.